Hello and welcome to the second episode of the Husky Pawdcast. I'm your host, Jonas Fryer. The Husky Pawdcast is NUTV's conversational podcast where all guests bring on a topic of their choosing, from life lessons to food to kangaroos. Whatever they find interesting is welcomed here. Today, I'm joined by Sarav, Daniel, and Peter. Hey guys, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Jonas,
Hey.
what's up?
Cool. So let's dive into the first topic. So my topic that I'm bringing on the show today is crazy travel stories. So I've been doing a lot of thinking into memory and just kind of the things that we remember and thinking about travel specifically. Obviously, I remember the amazing, great trips I've been on, but I also tend to remember the ones where everything went wrong. I remember them more vividly, and recently I think I've been remembering a bit more fondly than some of like the best trips. So I just wanted to see if any of you guys had any crazy travel stories where something crazy happened or you ran into somebody. I know I have plenty of them, but I wanted to hear what you guys have.
Do you have like a reason for why you think that you've been remembering it so much more fondly lately than you used to be? Like
I
the
don't know.
negative trip?
Probably is getting older.
Yeah. I think there is that sort of sense of adventure of thinking that like with any adventure, like it's not going to be all highs. It's going to be like ups and downs too. And so there is something about, I tend to remember like the specific details or like the exact like feelings I felt during like the crazy bad experiences. Like I remember when I spent part of a semester abroad in Australia, and I took a flight up to Brisbane for the weekend, and we chose like the worst seat on the worst airline. And we thought we were going to die the entire time, but
Oof.
it was looking back on it, it's actually like it's something you can sort of
Yeah.
laugh about. The craziest part though is actually the airport. So Australia has a very laid back culture. I love it about Australia. I think it's one of the best things. There's some things I feel like they shouldn't be so laid back about. And I think airport security is probably on the top of that list. So first off, I did not have to show a single boarding pass or piece of identification to get on the plane,
What the hell?
which
That's
means I could have
suspicious.
just been some dude who just walked in off the airport.
Yeah.
Not even like your passport?
Nothing. I literally just I literally walked onto the plane. The best part, or really I guess the worst part, depending on how you're looking at it, the security at this airport. If you ever seen like from a sitcom from the 90s of like the really old, like it's literally just a metal detector and like that's it. That's how it is today in Australia. The metal detector has two sort of settings. There's the normal, it flashes red if you have metal in your pockets. And then there's also a blue siren that can go off for when it's like, oh shit, this person has a lot of metal in their pocket. Okay. I go through, the TSA agent, he's half asleep. He's waving me through. Nothing goes off. So he's just like, yeah, just keep going. The guy behind me, he sets off the alarm and the siren. I swear the face on this TSA agent doesn't even change. He's just like, yeah, just keep going, keep going.
That's crazy.
And I'm like, what's the point of having the metal detector? It's
Guy
like,
has an anvil in his pocket and he's
I'm
just
like-
like straight through.
yeah, this dude was on a mission or something. I don't know. Like, good grief. Yeah. But
Yeah, that is really interesting because it's so much more different, obviously, than like here and then like other countries that I've been to. Like I've never heard it be so relaxed.
Yeah.
How's it been for like airports in like other countries you guys have been to?
This isn't really an airport, but one time like there was like a period of like 2 years in like the late 2010s where they opened up Cuba like for very specific tourism.
Mm.
So me and my family, like we took a cruise to Cuba, and that was really cool. And obviously there was like a lot of security, especially like on the Cuban side of things. Like we'd go out, we'd have to talk to like 5 different people. Like they'd have to make sure that we're not like about to spread like propaganda or something on the
Mm.
Cubans. And it was a really interesting trip all around, because I'm sure like back then, like I was a lot younger, so I probably wasn't like thinking about the world as much. But, like looking back, like I'm sure that everything that I saw and like that we did was very curated, like by like the
Sure.
Cuban authority to like make sure that we're not like seeing how like I guess I don't actually know like if things are bad there, but
Yeah.
like because
Same like
obviously
North
a very
Korea light.
yeah, like it's obviously like a very controlled state. So there was like a lot of limitations. Like, we had to stay within like a certain radius of the center city, and then like
Oh
anywhere
wow.
else we went, we had to like go with a tour guide who'd like show us exactly what we saw. The food was really good though. I'm not gonna lie. But yeah, looking back, it was just really interesting because like I realized like I really didn't like usually when I travel like I'll try to interact with like the locals and stuff, but I really like didn't see that many like people to interact with. Like it was kind of
Hmm.
like more of a ghost town or like more like they like cordon off this area just for like the tourists to come see, which I've never like experienced something like else like that in the past. So that was just really interesting to me.
Wow. Yeah, I remember I was supposed to go on a Cuba trip. I think it ended up getting canceled, but yeah, it was only for maybe like 10 years or so they actually had it open.
Yeah.
So that's awesome that
Yeah,
you got
literally
to
like
go.
when we were like on the cruise like back, like Trump announced like, "Oh, no more Cuba visits." So,
Really?
yeah, maybe I
Wow.
Did you almost get
accidentally
stuck?
No, we already gone by
Oh,
then,
okay.
but maybe I'd accidentally done something horrible without realizing.
So now you guys can't go visit Cuba with a US passport?
No.
Nope.
Oh,
Can you visit Cuba?
I think I can.
Oh, wow.
Would you want to?
Oh,
If I have enough money, I'll probably end up going to Yeah.
that was nice.
as many countries as I can.
Mm.
Oh, yeah, that sucks.
Where's some other countries you've been to, Sarav?
I haven't been to many, so I haven't traveled that much. When I was young, both my parents were working for the government, so they barely had any day off. So we rarely traveled. Like during my undergrad days, I traveled a lot, and then airport wise speaking, I've been to like 4 or 5 in India, and then I've been through Heathrow, Paris, and Qatar.
Mhm.
And every airport that I've been to had decent amount of security involved. Yeah. I could not just walk up into the airport, especially in India. It's like pretty strict.
Hmm.
I'm guessing France was a little comparatively a little easier because it was really crowded. They kind of opened up a separate way for like 10, 20 random people. I ended up being one of them, so I could kind of skip a lot and then go directly. So I think we took the route with a which a typical pilot would take. So we were
Sure.
like we kind of saved a lot of time with that, but still we had to like go through security checks. So yeah, your story was like really something
Yeah,
that I've
that because yeah, I've been that was the only time I think I've seen it that lax.
Yeah.
It was funny though because I ended up having to leave early because that was when COVID hit. And the day when I was flying back, it was a complete 180. That was like a complete lockdown, um, like multiple checkpoints to get through security. So, um,
As it should be.
as it
Yeah.
should be. Yeah. So, that was definitely, it was a bit of a shock at that point because I thought I knew
Yeah.
Australian airports and then
Completely different.
yeah. What
I feel
about you,
like-
Peter?
Well, I don't know. I haven't traveled like a crazy amount of times. But I feel like all the airports I've been to have been like fairly strict. I don't know. I always hear stories from my parents about like pre 9/11 US airports where everything is very lax in that sense. And it's just like so different now. I don't know. I remember with Australia feeling like it's just like such a different thing, like so far away.
Yeah.
I remember hearing a story about it was like an American asking a guy from Australia, like, did you guys like know about 9/11 when it happened? And they said that basically all it meant was just like children's cartoons were canceled for that morning and it was just the news and that was all he remembered it for.
Wow.
Very different.
Yeah, I can't imagine the pain they must have went through when the
Yeah.
cartoons were canceled.
Gosh.
But Sarav, so you you obviously like came to America for school here. Like, did you travel a lot within America, like since you've come here or no?
I wouldn't call it a lot. So I've probably been to like 4 or 5 different states. So everything in the Northeast region.
I see.
Been to Vermont a couple of times. Been to New Hampshire like a bunch of times. Been to DC once. That was
Cool.
like a proper uh, trip. And then I've been to Philly. That was like a really nice. So that's one of the trips that was unplanned and it went really well. So I went to Baltimore for a conference for like 3 days, and out of that, one day was a DC day trip.
So it was for a Christian mission. And I'm someone who's like, when it comes to religion, I'm a borderline atheist, but I wanted to kind of learn what every other religion is about. So I ended up going to a lot of those events, and then I met a lot of people. And this is during New Year's Eve. So we had a party, around like 700 people dancing in like a big ass hotel.
Wow.
And I used to dance a lot. Like stopped drinking, so I don't dance that much now.
Hmm.
But then that day I was dancing. So I randomly met some dude who saw me dancing. He's like, "Oh, you dance really well. Can you teach me that particular move?" So I was teaching him that. And my plan was to, because I went alone, my plan was to, like, because I was coming traveling either through Philly and New York to Boston, I was like, maybe I like go to either one of the locations and spend a couple of days there, because that was during semester break for us. And this guy ended up being someone who was living in Philly. And he told me, like, you can come stay with me for 2 days. I like show you around. And I met one more guy from Niger, not Nigeria, from Niger.
Yeah.
So he also somehow ended up being someone from Philly, and he goes to school there. So I went and crashed there for 2 days, roamed around on my own for one day, and then one other day, this guy had a car and he basically showed me around the entire city. So that's one of the trips which I did on my own. This is like starting of 2024, Jan 1st and 2nd. So one of the trips that went really well,
Mhm.
but I have like a couple of stories where trips went really bad.
Yeah.
Yeah. What an amazing friend. Like you'd known him for like how many hours at that
Yeah.
point, and he
I
shows
think
you
at
around.
that
Yeah,
point of
that's
time, it was
awesome.
like 2-3 hours.
Wow.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Was he able to do the move?
I think he did.
He got it done. He accomplished it.
Yeah.
Wow. No, that's yeah, it's crazy. I definitely relate to you with what you say about it being like unplanned. I find a
Yeah.
lot of times the unplanned trips or end up being some of the best ones, like the most spontaneous ones. I don't know if you guys have ever had any of them. For me, I like to be spontaneous with like hiking and kind of outdoorsy stuff. So it'll be like, especially like during the summer, like if there's like a long day and I had like nothing to do, I'm like, I just want to just get out and go hiking. I just like find a mountain somewhere and
Yeah.
yeah, just kind of just be spontaneous about it.
Mm.
So
Totally agree with that. I had a trip over, I think it was like a winter break. I was back in New York.
Mhm.
And a lot of my friends from home are very gamery, very hard to drag outside to go do something like hiking.
yeah,
But the stars aligned one weekend and I was looking around for just like places to go as an excuse to just go out and do something fun with people. And I found the smallest lighthouse in New York, which is this place called Stony Point.
Oh, sure.
And it's pretty small. It's not like fit in your hand small, but it's like probably double, maybe triple my height. Um, and there was a nice like mile long hike leading up to it. So we just drove over, walked over. Um, but honestly, my favorite part of it wasn't the lighthouse itself. It was going back past the parking lot. There was this train track where some cargo trains go by. Um, and it was the most beautiful thing I've ever seen. There was like a graffitied up
Wow.
bridge across, and then just actual miles of tracks next to just like nature. So we walked down like a few miles,
Ooh, nice.
got up on a bridge nearby, and then watched like two of the trains go back and
Oh,
forth.
that
And
sounds
it just reminds me of the videos online I see of people who like will just hop on a cargo train and just go,
yeah.
you know? But it was beautiful, and it was not the main attraction at all, but it was just some random spot we found that was like amazing.
Yeah, it ends up
Yeah.
being like even better than like what you were going to see.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome. Dana, do you have any experiences like that?
Like not so many where it's like kind of unplanned, but I guess like there have been like trips with my friends where there was one trip in particular where we all went to Cape Cod like for a couple days in the summer, and then there was like this one point where like me and like, a couple other people were like kind of tired of a lot of the other people, so we were like, okay, let's just go drive around and see what we find. And then like we got to like this one like kind of pier point like right at sunset, and it was just like really nice and peaceful, and like the water was like reflecting really well on the from the sun. So yeah, it all just like really came together nice. But yeah, I don't really like I wish I did more like unplanned stuff. Like that seems very like fun to kind of just like go with the flow. But I feel like I'm like the kind of person where like like in my regular day-to-day life, like I'm okay with like being very go to the flow and just like letting things happen. But when I'm like trying to like when I'm like on a trip or like traveling somewhere, I feel like I'd get like kind of like like nervous or antsy if I don't know what's coming next.
Sure, I get that. It's almost like the feeling like when you're kind of the main thing you're doing is like going on a trip or going somewhere. It's like you want to make sure like you put enough time
Yeah, exactly.
into planning it,
Yeah.
so you get the most out of it.
Yeah. I have a trip coming up though to California this summer where so
Awesome.
far like we've done nothing for planning. So
Mm.
it's going to be very loose, but I'm excited for it though. It'll be a good opportunity to kind of get some experience with traveling spontaneously.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That first time on the West Coast?
No, I've been to California before, but yeah, my sister's out there right now, so I see her. I go visit her a bit. So.
Nice.
Oh, awesome. I think that's time we can switch up topics. So, Sarav, I know you had a topic about the differences between Hollywood and Indian film. So, I
Yeah.
want to hear more about this.
Okay, so the reason I chose this topic, I think, as far as the viewers are concerned, you guys will know because the next two topics are really serious. So I just wanted to have something light. Um, so this is something that I've kind of wondered for a while, especially being someone who's interested in films. Especially, I wanted to be a filmmaker, and I still do, but I don't want to start my career in India. In India, there are, I think, 5 to 6 different film industries because there are too many languages. So each industry is associated with a particular language, and they all have the name similar to Hollywood. So we steal the name, or rather the structure of the name. We call it different woods. So we
Yep.
call it Bollywood, Tollywood,
Yep.
Kollywood, and whatnot. But then the reason I wanted to come here is because the films or the TV sitcoms or whatever from Hollywood seems a little more realistic because no one breaks into dance at random. But my point today is about breaking into dance because it is a very, very useful tool as far as screenwriting is concerned because you can like push the story to a great extent within like 3 or 4 minutes instead of if you don't have that block of music with very uh purposely written lyrics which pushes the story, you will end up spending like 20-30 minutes to achieve the same growth in the story. So that is one tool that I feel like Hollywood can use. And if I successfully become a filmmaker, I'll definitely bring that into Hollywood.
Yeah.
But then, yeah, so I thought of that. I've had similar conversations with different professors of mine in Northeastern as well. Um, I just wanted to get you guys, the opinion from you guys, because you have also been involved in film for quite a while and maybe want to be a filmmaker or something to do with the industry. That is number one. So about the use of music in films, especially the difference between how it's used in Indian films and here. And the second thing is about intermission. So we call it interval or intermission. And so there is two aspects of it. So one is actually like taking a break because I want to go pee during a 2 hour movie and I don't want to miss the movie, but I have to pee.
Yep.
So it's really bad. I did not know that intermissions did not exist here until like a year ago. And I've had like a couple of bad experiences. Then now I make it a point to go pee before going to the movie.
Yeah.
But then if it's like a 1 hour, like say 2 hour, something less than 2 hour, it's fine. It's like 80-90 minute movie, it's fine. But if it's more than 2 hours, I feel like there should be an intermission in between.
Mm.
And the second aspect of it is because Indian films have that, um, all the films have that, it's more of a very common thing to do. So what happens is in terms of the storyline, there is always a cliffhanger.
Yeah.
So it's more like a climax, a mini climax in a movie, and then you have a small break, and then you have the second half. So sometimes people rate the first half and second half separately. So it's like most of the movies, if you go ask for a review, they'll be like the first half is amazing, the second half was a little slow, or the first half was a little slow, but the second half was amazing. But then there is always a cliffhanger there. I feel like that's a very, very useful tool to bring here as well.
Yeah.
Because there are because when I studied screenwriting here, Act Two is something that is considered very important, but at the same time, that is something writers screw up very easily. But if you include this aspect in Act Two, I feel like it will become very easy to write Act Two because you basically have broken down Act Two into two halves, and you'll have like a climax in between.
Got it. I have an immediate question that I want to ask,
Yeah.
which is like, then in a lot of Indian movies, do you still think they follow a 3-act structure or like a 5-act structure, or does it completely change?
Okay, it depends on who the filmmaker is.
Yeah.
There are a few of them who are brand new, pretty new, and they do follow. I had no idea about 3 act structure before I actively tried making a film in India. But then I started looking at films whether they have a 3 act structure. If it's a very experienced director who have made like shit tons of movies, then there is a higher chance that he or she breaks the 3 act structure.
Yeah.
But then if it's someone who's like pretty new, they usually stick to it.
Gotcha.
I have a question also.
Yeah.
So you were saying how they always have the cliffhanger in the middle.
Yeah.
So would you not like? I feel like for me personally, I haven't watched like any Indian movies, so I can't really speak to it. But like, I feel like in my opinion, if every movie I saw kind of followed that, like, and like I knew like, oh, like the cliffhanger's coming, like I'm halfway through the movie, something like big's about to happen, like would you not say that? Like, do you not think that would get stale or?
No, but then if you don't include that as well, you still have the same structure for the entire movie. A movie has a beginning, a middle, and an end. So you know that the movie is going to end. It's going to end big, or some question that was put forth in Act One is going to be answered in Act Three. So that structure is always going to be there. So this is very similar, but it has one more major scene in the middle. That's it.
I
So
see.
you'll get used to it, and it's not particularly just a cliffhanger. It can be something really funny. It can be so. There is one more thing in Indian films that lacks anywhere else. So that is heroism. So in Indian films, irrespective of which language you go to, or rather which industry that you watch movies from, you'll have a handful of actors who will dominate the industry. So I know one of my favorite. So my most favorite actor ever is Jackie Chan, and it's closely followed by someone from my industry called as he's called as Kamal Hassan. So he has been acting since he was like 8 9 years old as child artist in a few movies, and then when he turned like 17 18, he started acting as lead, and I think he's around 68 now, and he's still acting. He's like
Jeez.
he had a ceremony of celebrating 60 years in film.
Wow.
So that kind of heroism is not there in US. So the closest
Yeah.
I could imagine is someone from Marvel, say RDJ, or someone who has been, or say Hugh Jackman, who's been doing a particular character for like 15 years or 16 years.
But even that, like it tends to be more for the character too. Like the hero part is like people love Iron Man, but they're not going crazy for like Robert Downey Jr. in the same way it is with a lot of Indian actors.
Yeah. So when it comes to Indian actors, the heroism, what I mean is that you go to watch movies because that person is there. You don't worry about what character he's portraying.
And do those actors typically follow just those kind of role, just like heroic, like leading man roles?
It is usually lead, but again, it can differ between people to people. But the majority of the people who have the heroism, who have such a big fan following, usually act in very commercial movies. Say some movies that I can uh, give as an example, which is a Hollywood based movie, would be say Expandables or things like that, where you have sheer heroism involved.
Yeah.
Or any Jackie Chan movies or like Bruce Lee movies, for example. But then there are my favorite hero, Kamal Hassan. He's a very good actor. He's a method actor. So his spectrum of acting will vary. So
Okay.
he would obviously like act in a very commercial film, but at the same time he'll act in a very character driven film as well.
Okay.
Yeah. So yeah, my question for you guys is, uh, especially when it comes to music.
Yeah.
In Hollywood, obviously there is musicals. So in India, I think in 40s and 50s there were musicals. Now there is no more musical. Every movie will have 4 or 5 different songs, and there is a template for it. So you'll have one song to introduce the male lead, one song to introduce the female lead if it's a rom-com, one song when they both meet, one song when they fall in love, one song when if the girl breaks his heart, and there's one sad song.
Mhm.
We call it soup song. So this is a template if it's so this is fun.
Yeah.
It's not that relevant to the film. If you exclude all 5 songs, you'll have a decent rom-com.
Yep.
But there are songs which will push the story. So one example is a movie that released in my language, which was remade in I think all major languages in India. Uh, in this storyline, the son is being disowned by the father, and then the son gets married to a girl, and then within 3 minutes they'll show 20 years of his life where he becomes a very respectable man in the society, and then the story picks up. The disowned father and now the successful son, they'll somehow like kind of rekindle their relationship, and what happens is the remaining 1 hour of the movie. So the movie is about 3 hours, which is usually the length of Indian movies that were released before 2000.
Yeah.
And after 1.5 hour you have this 4 or 5 minute song. If that song is excluded, the movie would have been 3.5 hours to achieve the same
Yeah.
thing. So, what do you guys think about including songs that can do that in Hollywood?
That's a very interesting concept because like to me personally, like I'm not a fan of musicals because I feel like they do kind of a lot of the time like the songs kind of take up some of the story, or it's like it feels a little like forced, and like I don't know, it's not I'm not saying musicals are bad, like it's just not my cup of tea.
Hmm.
So it sounds interesting like what you're saying, kind of like especially what you're talking about with that, like where the song just covers like 30 years of this guy's life or
Yeah.
60 years or whatever you said. But I feel like that's like very interesting to me because I am a fan of like a good montage, even though
Yeah.
I don't like musicals. So I think that's like really interesting like method of using like song and dance to tell a story. But I again like I just come back to that same hesitation. Like if all the movies have this same like kind of trope, like you're saying it still doesn't like get stale to you, even with
No.
like
Okay.
every
So, yeah, I can understand what the question you have. Um, so there are multiple dimensions to it. So yeah. So when you think about a rom-com in Indian film which has 5 songs, 2 introduction songs, 2 love songs, and 1 breakup song, that's going to be the same with almost all the rom-coms in India. But then what gets interesting is the actual song. So Hollywood is one of the industry where you have independent music. I feel like that's given, as far as I know, in India, independent music is not that big, or it's given not that much importance. But here you have so many artists making so many music, so writing them or singing it. They're making so much money doing that. One reason I don't think music and films in Hollywood kind of combine is because they are like two very strong and powerful and money making industries. So it's a little hard for them to make it one. In India, the music industry is not as rich as the film industry. So the film industry kind of owns the musicians in a way. So
Mm.
they make money only by making music for the films.
That's so interesting.
Yeah. So what happens is, to answer your question, it doesn't get stale because the music becomes really good, and because there is so much competition, and you have like thousands of movies being released in a year, and all movies have so many songs. The art becomes, you get expertise in the art, right? Like you do it again and again. So the songs are really good. The lyrics is insane. So in 80s and 90s, there was one music director in Tamil cinema. He's called Raja, which literally translates to king. So that guy is a genius, and he's considered, and he's like given the title as a genius. So I think he has composed music for probably like 4,000, 5,000 films in his career. He's like
Yeah.
pretty old now. And in 80s, there were occasions where people go watch the movie just for the songs. So
Yeah.
people will go watch the song, and once the song is over, they like walk out of the theater.
Wow. I was gonna ask, so that reminds me of like Stephen Sondheim in like American musicals.
Hmm.
I want to ask, what are your opinions on American musicals?
I've not seen a lot, but I like them.
Okay.
When you say musicals, I think of Chicago. I think of Les
Yep.
Miserables. Those are the 2 movies that I think of, and they're really nice. I like musicals. There were musicals in Indian film industry as well, but they kind of stopped. It's really nice. I admire it because it's really really difficult to do. That's one of the reason I admire it. Yeah, I like them.
Yeah. And do they remind you at all of Indian cinema, or do you think there's a hard divide between movies that have like the 5 songs in this typical structure versus a musical? Like, is that a hard line, or do you think that can be blurred?
Uh, okay, so there is a difference because usually these songs kind of either it's a montage that pushes the movie or rather the story, or it is a sequence of imagination. So when it comes to musical, it's still the story, so there is no imagination there, or pretty much. So it's gonna be the lead characters randomly breaking into song.
Yeah.
So here you'll know when the song is going to come because there will be some kind of a lead. So there is, and you know that there is the structure, and usually like there is going to be a strong when they introduce a character and all of that. So it doesn't feel like they are randomly breaking into song. I feel
Yeah.
like that's the only difference. But other than that, it's probably the same.
Gotcha. Because I feel like musicals, again, I'm not the biggest musical person. Like, I like a lot that I've seen, but I don't have like an extensive knowledge on them.
Right.
Um, but I feel like there is also, depending on the type of story, that same kind of expected template, you know? Because I feel like all stories generally, it's like the whole Joseph Campbell, like Hero of a Thousand Faces. You can boil stories down to like
Yeah.
a general progression. And I'm sure it does vary by culture. But I imagine that if you looked at like 1,000 American musicals, you could find a general progression of songs and boil it down to like one or two or a few. I don't know.
Yeah.
Maybe. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's interesting because I'm very much like I haven't personally been like the biggest musical fan either. But I do like this idea of like using music as a different tool. I think a lot of times
Yeah.
in Hollywood films, music is important in the sense that it serves more as a complement to what's going on in the story. Like if you think of like a hierarchical structure, it's kind of like it's not the focal point. It's just there to kind of give texture, as opposed to it sounds like for a lot of Indian films, like that's like the main focus of a lot of scenes. And um, I think it's a different way of telling stories. I do like what you said though about almost having like different character themes, like having like certain pieces of music tied to certain characters or certain ideas.
Yeah.
Because I feel like that's something we do have, I think, with a lot of certain films. I think Star Wars is a big one that still has like character themes, but we've kind of moved away from that. So I do like the idea of using music to actually express ideas as opposed to just purely complementing or just kind of underscoring what's going on. I want to get back to the intermission point. Daniel, do you think that we should have intermissions back in films or
I think it is interesting. Like, I guess earlier I was saying that it might get stale, but I guess I was kind of misunderstanding what you're saying. How like it could highlight the intermission doesn't necessarily have to be like a cliffhanger versus just like a sharp moment.
Yeah.
And then I feel like that could kind of work in, I mean, here too, like any movie kind of probably does have kind of, or I guess not any movie, but in the middle of the movie, like the first part is like kind of where you're introducing, setting things up.
Mhm.
And then like the second part is kind of where like shit kind of starts hitting the fan. And then the third part is where like some kind of conclusion happens. So I think it would make sense. Like an intermission could be interesting to use. And I also, with the like, the idea of like having all these songs and like having that drive the story forward, I think an intermission could also be a good like opportunity where like you could take a break and like people can talk about like what do you think this part of the song meant versus like what do you think that part of the song meant versus like in American movies like you're saying like you need like 30 minutes of that same scene to just paint everything out like very clearly and like step by step. So it does kind of sacrifice that interpretational aspect to an extent. So I think that is an interesting concept.
Yeah. That is true. But to go back to what the songs were used for, out of so a song that is used pretty much to push the storyline, it's gonna be probably made entirely out of montages, and I don't think we'll need time to interpret what they're kind of trying to
I
communicate.
see.
Yeah.
And the other songs which are used purely for entertainment purposes, uh, maybe we have a type of song called as item song,
Yep.
which is basically going to be really sexy, going to be insanely glamorous, or it's going to be like an insanely good dance number.
Yeah.
And it will still have a very sexy female and male in it. So that's one type of song that is used to attract audiences. So you go watch a movie once. Okay,
Yeah.
given the fact that think about when you don't have streaming services, or rather when you did not have streaming services. So you go watch a movie once because of the story. What pushes you to go watch it again?
I love the story
Yeah,
personally.
yeah, that is true.
But
But there is nothing new there, right? But then
well, sorry, go ahead.
yeah, sorry. So there was an actress in 3 or 4 industries in India, the same actress. So because it's like if you are kind of bilingual or multilingual, you can like go act in like any industry you want within India. So she acted in like almost all the southern Indian movie industries, and she is known for these songs.
Yeah.
So people used to, so similar to the music director who's like really famous and people just go to watch or listen to his songs in theater, people go just to see this particular actress dance.
Yeah.
So I think Indian industries, they just tried to kind of build things,
Yeah.
or tools through which they'll attract people to come multiple times to the theater. So if I am a young adult who's fascinated by some actress that I see on screen,
Yeah.
and there is a scene where she's like portrayed really not sexually, but yeah, it's called an item dance for a reason. So they'll be like considering the other female in the screen, or rather presenting on the screen, or even it can be the same actress who's playing the lead, but in one of the song they might be very I don't want to call, okay, to be very frank, it's the director or the cinematographer kind of objectifying women.
Yeah. I mean, it's an item song.
Yeah.
That's the
Yeah,
impression
yeah,
I
I didn't even
got.
think about that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
So you have a group of people who go watch the film again
Yeah.
because
For that
there is no
specific
other
scene.
way they can see the song.
Has that changed now that people have YouTube clips and everything like that? Like,
So the item song is there, but now it's so we release trailers, we release teasers, so
Yeah.
they'll release like a small segment of the song to attract people.
Yeah.
So there is still item songs in films.
Yeah.
So now it became more of a point of growth or point of competition to show who's better than who. So the actress might be that might be a really really good dance number.
Yeah.
So that will show that the particular music director is the best out of all the others there.
Yeah.
That it can be a very good song.
Yeah.
That might show that the singer is really better than the other singers out there, or it might be a very good visually. It might be the dance actual moves can be really good.
Yeah.
That might show the dominance of the choreographers and the actress or
Yeah.
actor.
I have a quick question here
Yeah.
because I see like I've seen online a lot of discussion about like the death of the American movie star as like an idea recently, and I feel
Yeah.
like there are a lot of similarities there with like, you know, a specific person being the draw where it's like, "Oh, I'm going to go see a this person movie." Like you don't even remember the name. You're just like, "Oh, I saw that new
Right.
RDJ
Yeah.
movie or
Mhm.
whatever."
Yeah.
Like things like that.
Yeah.
And how that's kind of died over the last like few decades in the US. And how there are a few
Yeah.
like people point recently to Glenn Powell as like starting to revive the like people are going because it's him and he's like hot and cool and like
Yeah. And you definitely see that like a bit with, like Zendaya and
Yep.
and some of these kind of like up and coming actors and actresses that like, I think a lot of the younger generations kind of like grew up with them and
Yeah.
have kind of been following them throughout their careers. But yeah, it's been an interesting thing to follow for sure, because I think a lot of times like actors, they do kind of get associated with their characters nowadays, and you kind of remember the characters of the stars and not necessarily like the movie stars themselves.
Yeah.
Yeah, so let's switch up topics. So, Daniel, you wanted to talk about living in the present versus living in the future. This is something that I've thought about a lot, so I want to hear your take on it.
yeah. So I don't know. I feel like, especially recently, I guess, because I'm like getting closer and closer to that big scary graduation date. But I've been really like thinking about like how I want, like what I want my life to look like after college and like what I want to be doing. And like since I started thinking about it, I realized like I really have no idea. But yeah, I realized a big reason why that is because like for the past like few years, I really never think about the past or the future. Like I just kind of try to stay only in the present. And it definitely has its pluses. I think it leads to a lot more like enjoyment in the like life enjoyment because I'm not like sad over something that happened or like stressing over something that might happen in the future. But it has kind of caused me, I feel like, to be a little bit like behind maybe. I guess I don't have a frame of reference for where other people are, but like or in my opinion, like a little behind. Like I haven't like I don't put so much work into like thinking about where what I want to do or like which kind of companies I want to work for or like where I want to like set up my life or like how I want it to be like. I just kind of focus on living the present. And again, yeah, so it has its benefits, but I think also it does kind of come with some faults because you might not necessarily make the best decisions like for your long-term self. Like recently, like the other day, like I didn't go to the gym and then my roommate was like, what'd you like? And then I like didn't really do anything instead. I was just like sitting at home watching TV. And then my roommate was like, told me like, oh, like think about in like 2 years, like your future self, would he be happier if you did this or this? And I realized like I've never put myself in the shoes of my future self.
Mhm.
And it's just like been really kind of tripping me out lately. Like I've been trying to think about it a lot more, like the long term,
Mm.
because everything's kind of like a snowball effect, like butterfly effect. You never know like what you do now, how it'll affect your future. In some cases, and in some cases you do know, like you know, like oh, if I work hard every day, then I'm probably more likely to have like a better outcome or like a more desirable outcome. But then like working that hard every day, like it does like kind of take away from enjoying the present moment. And like we're still so young and like time is so fleeting. So like what's really I know it's like it's probably the answer is definitely neither like one or the other. Like there's definitely a balance.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I guess I've just been trying to like find that balance recently.
Mm.
But yeah, I'm just curious to see what you guys think about that.
Um, I would like to approach this as someone who thinks about this a lot and as someone who's for most of his life has been on the complete other side of the spectrum. Um, I think it's a really interesting conversation. Personally, I spend a lot of my life head down in a planner. Like I literally write out everything that I'm going to be doing the next day, every day. Not like penciled into the hour, but like nearly, getting there.
And do you ever like diverge from that or mostly no?
Sure, I do.
Mhm.
I mostly honestly put it down for just the satisfaction of like completing something and then just checking it off, like being done with something. But if I hear about something new that's coming up, I will immediately go to write it down. Like it is something that I feel the like compulsion to, like I have to put stuff down somewhere else to plan ahead.
Mhm.
I don't know. I feel like part of it is how you grow up and how your parents want you to, like whether they emphasize planning heavily or not. I feel like my mom was the main person that handled like academic stuff with me, and she very much is like anxious and thinking about the future a lot. Um, so I kind of inherited that in terms of like always plan for what could be coming up ahead, and I feel like there have been definitely good things to that for me. I like the structure, but I also think that a lot of my main regrets in life are things that I haven't done
Yes.
versus things that I did and then turned out badly. And I feel like if I lived in the present more, um, I might be more willing to take those leaps into things I'm unfamiliar with and just have more stories, have more experience, and just enjoy my days more.
Yeah, that's interesting that you mentioned about your mom because my mom has like also played a similar role in my life. Like she
Yeah.
handled like my academics and my extracurriculars.
Yeah.
And she's also like very much like how you're describing your mom, like very like focused on the future, very focused on oh, like down the line you have to do like XYZ, like you have to
Yeah.
be ready for XYZ. But then like I feel like for me, I kind of had the opposite reaction to how you did.
Yeah.
Because I was like, okay, but I don't really want to, I don't know if I want to do that yet, or I don't like that's not a guarantee. Like and like I'd see like obviously how anxious like it made her and like other
Yep.
people around me who like are always thinking about the future. I'm like, I don't want to live like that. Like I don't want to be super anxious all the time. So I'd rather not do that and then just kind of focus on what's going on around me. But then again, like at the same time, that kind of like I look at like some of my friends who are like more like future oriented, more action oriented, and then I kind of see them like kind of already being in like pretty decently set up for their future and like kind of know exactly where they're going and like are ready for like what's to come. And then I feel like I'm not necessarily like that. Yeah, so I feel like I kind of like again like the kind of the opposite exactly of what you're saying, like how you
Yeah.
regret all the things you haven't done. I feel like I regret a lot of the actually I guess it's still kind of the same. Like I regret a lot of things that I haven't done, but I guess in a different way. Like I regret that I haven't done more to like set up my future.
in terms of like, I guess the things, wanting to plan out for your future, are you focusing more kind of like setting yourself on the, like the professional side, or is it more on like a personal side? Like kind of like what are the things, I guess in terms of like priorities, like what are the things that you're putting for first?
Yeah. So I guess so the main two things that like I would like be concerned about are like my career and like kind of like my what am I gonna do for a living?
Yeah.
But then there's also like I feel like I kind of neglect my health a lot of the time because I'm like not really thinking about that future Daniel who's like maybe like 15 years down the line and like kind of in a not as good healthy position because of the choices I made now. And then lately I've been addressing like the health thing more, which I'm pretty happy about, but I've still not really been able to hit that like career, like future life, like outside of like I guess the bubble of college, like I haven't been able to pierce that like veil into like what that's gonna look like for me. And then I think it also has some like it's not even just like in terms of what the future is gonna look like because of what I'm doing. It's also what do I realistically want to do? And then I see and I'm like, oh, I haven't really been like working towards that because that still seems like so far away or so abstract that like I'd rather just like, go out, have fun, whatever.
Yeah, I relate 100% to the health side of things because I'm definitely right now. I was kind of like you, Peter, where like I was raised in a very plan everything, thinking so much about the future, and I've been doing a much better job of focusing more on kind of just appreciating the present, understanding it's the only thing that really exists, and to your point, like I've definitely had times where I regretted like staying and doing work, but I've never regretted going out and doing something fun with friends or having a good experience. But I have with regard to the health thing. Like I still find myself, it's embarrassing, but like I'll be late at night, just like that junk food sitting right there. It looks so good, like I should be going to bed, but oh man, another Chips Ahoy could be
Yeah.
Just what I
great.
needed.
So like, and that's definitely a thing where it's like, it's not one or the other,
Yeah.
it's like, I definitely think, like there are definitely things like you definitely, do what you want to do now, but just be smart about it. Um, and yeah, sometimes there are the decisions that are just like don't eat, eat some vegetables occasionally,
Yeah. Have you guys heard of like Brian Johnson?
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah, he's like this like billionaire who's trying to like live forever.
Oh my God.
yeah.
Yeah, so he lives his whole life like super like overly regulated. Like he knows exactly what he's gonna eat. He knows exactly what he's gonna do, when he's gonna go to bed. He does like 10 like tests on his body a day. Like, and I don't know. I look at someone like that, and then I just think like, what happens if you get hit by a car tomorrow? Like,
Yeah.
what was all
Exactly.
this for?
Yeah, it's like
that is
he's
true.
surviving. Is he really living
Yeah.
though? Like, is that a life?
I feel like
Yeah.
he definitely takes it to the point of like complete dysfunction.
Yeah. But I guess there's also other way of looking at it, like if that's what he's passionate about, like, and he is kind of a pioneer if you think about it, like trying to. But again, like it's just there's no guarantees in the future, so he doesn't really know what he's maybe like all the probes that he's been putting in him to learn how good his body is are secretly gonna like affect him very negatively in like 5 years, and he doesn't really know. So
Maybe.
or maybe
yeah.
he does know.
Maybe it works out because see in when we consider history, when we consider people who have been inventors, they've always been a laughing stock generally.
That's true.
So
Yeah.
maybe whatever he's trying to build, if it works out for him, it might be a very big invention or a very big benefit for like the entire human race. But then yeah, I really liked what Peter said, or rather what the way Peter looked at the question that Daniel had, bringing in parenting and all of that. And I feel like for any serious questions, any philosophical questions, you always find a lot of sayings that go very well with it. So balance is the utmost is one of the things that I kind of go by. So irrespective of whatever we talk about, whatever be it may be, there has to be balance. So that's something that I try to kind of enforce within myself. But there is always the grass is always greener on the other side as well. So when especially between both of you, even though both of your moms kind of played the similar role, you took more you kind of mirrored what your mom did, but you kind of opposed what your mom did in a way. In my case, my father was a cop, so he had no control over his life. There is like zero planning involved. He has to be somewhere. He'll be told like 2 minutes ago, 2 minutes before there, and then he has to leave.
Yeah.
My mom on the other end was someone who still worked for the government, but she was like really busy. So I kind of grew on my own in a way. Obviously, like they were there. I would have been much different if I didn't have neither of them. But then none of them planned. So, but then I have been someone who plans uh, to the hour
Yeah.
for like 2 months straight, and then do shit for the next 10 months. So I've been in, I'm never on the balance. So maybe that's why I think balance is really important, because I'm
Yes.
usually on either end of the spectrum. So, but just to reassure, because Daniel was saying he's not sure about the career side of things. When it comes to reality, privilege exists. So that's something that I talk about in my first film, in like Blackburn as well. So that exists, and being someone who's doing undergrad from Northeastern, having done co-op, or having have currently being associated with some company, I feel like you are already in like a much better space compared to a lot of the other people out there. Think about the entire world, when you kind of zoom out and think about human beings in general, or people in general in like 2024 who are in their 20s figuring out life. You being someone who's born in US itself puts you in like a much better prospect. So it's good you're thinking about, I have to do more so that I achieve something in career. It's a good starting point, but just to reassure you, you are already fine. That's something that I wanted to say. But then, yeah, me personally, I also believe in the fact that if you focus and work hard for 6 months, you'll probably like fast forward your life 5 years. So there's a rough saying similar to that. So in my personal life, when I wanted to come abroad to do masters, I had to like kind of stop doing whatever I was doing for like 3 or 4 months, preparing for exams, preparing for this and that, preparing for getting fund and whatnot. So I kind of stopped working out, stopped hanging out with friends, and did that for like 3 4 months, which is why I'm here right now. So I feel like it's not that difficult to kind of realign or change your life. It just takes 2 or 3 months of you behaving completely opposite to kind of change the course of your life.
Yeah. One, I think also too, it sounds like you went in with the mentality of thinking that I'm going to work now so that, I'm setting myself up for a period of where, I can be fully happy and do exactly what I want. As opposed to, I think, a lot of people who they might think like, I don't exactly know what I'm going to do. So I'm just put aside my happiness for now and just like work on stuff. And it's like, it's almost like coming up with like a plan for happiness,
Mhm.
I think can be just as complementary as to like a plan for professionalism, a plan for work success.
Getting a little too philosophical, I would say happiness should never be an objective.
I agree with
It's a
that
recipe
personally.
for disaster.
Can you guys expand on that?
So if you think about being happy, you always want to achieve. So it's a state of mind. So say when you for someone, if you ask a person X, ask them what would make them happy. For the majority of the people I know, or like the majority of, let me take India into account, or like my friends into account, they'll tell that if I have this much amount of money, I'll be happy. But that is never the case. It's very hard for you to get that much amount of money in real life, so maybe they never experience it. But if you go to someone else who has that much amount of money and ask them, are they happy? That might not be the answer. They might look at something else. So if you have a bicycle, you might want a motorcycle. If you have a motorcycle, you might want a car. So there is no satisfaction in it. So it entirely depends on what you think is happiness. When I see very very poor people who can or cannot be religious. Okay, I am someone who's not very religious, but I consider myself a little spiritual. I'm like trying to learn things, but then there are people who are like really poor, but they always seem happy in life, and that's because they kind of put all the burden on a imaginary entity. If that is their coping mechanism, who am I to judge that? It's working for them, they are really happy. But then if you think about happiness and if you want to achieve it, I feel like you will not be able to achieve it. If you feel you're okay with wherever you are, if you include satisfaction, if you include contentness in your life, I think that's when happiness kind of comes into your life.
Yeah, I mean, it's a lot of it. It's like understanding like happiness doesn't come from like really anything that you do, or it's like it's wrong to associate with, wealth, or like saying like putting it almost past a goalpost and
Yeah.
saying like I will be happy when I get to that point. But it's like the reality is you can be happy right now doing
Yeah.
anything.
Yeah.
That's kind of like Sisyphus and the whole thing of like pushing a rock up the hill. It's like it's you can be happy with yourself. And I think oftentimes when you do that, um, everything else kind of falls into place. It makes it easier to kind of focus on periods of time when you are kind of working and setting yourself up for success.
I agree. I think that happiness should be incidental to the goal or like adjacent to it. You should think that, okay, this is a goal that just on more objective terms would probably be a good thing for me. And I feel like working towards something like that and not working towards this like ephemeral idea of, oh, happiness is a lot more
Yeah.
productive and a lot more. I think it's not good to also be thinking about happiness so often, personally. I find that whenever I'm like, whenever I tend to really focus on yeah, I'm feeling either like I'm feeling really happy and this is why, and I want to like define it and put it in a box. That's normally right before I start feeling kind of garbage.
Yeah.
And I think that there is something behind that, that I think that focusing on things that are more tangible, that you think those may bring you happiness. And it doesn't have to be like a materialistic thing. I think that's not a great way of going about it,
Mhm.
but just kind of basic things day by day that you can do that bring you happiness.
Right.
I think that's the thing to focus on.
Yeah. A lot of it's like understanding your own definitions for success, and specifically like success in your day to day, and making sure you achieve that no matter what you're doing. So for me, it's like, a big one was like making sure I can feel like every day can be an adventure, or there's always, opportunities to kind of spend time with people. So like for me, like being in a city, I realize is like a perfect thing for me.
Yeah.
And so it doesn't even matter really what I'm doing. I know I can achieve what I want to with that. Before we switch to the next topic, I want to make sure this camera's okay.
I also quickly wanted to add just there was a saying I heard, the whole idea that like life is a marathon, not a sprint, And I think that I don't know. I often get the impulse of like, okay, I have identified something that I know if I did it for a long time, I would feel happy with, And then I have that manic, like, oh, I wanna like, let me just set everything up for this right now, get it done, and then I'll just do this. Whatever. I'm just gonna rebrand myself and I'm just gonna go from there. And for me, it always works for a couple days or a week and then drops off. And I think what is a lot better is recognizing the things that you're already doing and the habits that you already have that are bringing you some happiness, and learning how to like kind of ease more into those. Or if you want to do a new thing, how to like integrate that into the schedule you already have. Yeah, I don't know. I feel like sometimes that want for like an immediate change for happiness often does the exact opposite for me.
Yeah, that's true. That kind of like I kind of agree with what you're saying, Saurav, about how happiness is kind of like contentment and not really striving towards like or not future things, but not like you don't necessarily need like money or like power or whatever to be happy. But so that's kind of why like I feel like I live my life so much in the present, because it's so easy to just look around and be like, wow, like things are pretty good right now. Though that tree is beautiful, like it's sunny outside, whatever. Like even just like that, like being able to be there and like experience that will bring me like probably so much more happiness than if I had like been locked up somewhere, like pining for like an imaginary goal that like isn't concrete yet.
So just to kind of preface to your
Sure.
final topic, which
Sure.
is Peter's topic about fate or free will.
Yeah.
We kind of paired them with Daniel's because I think it's a really natural conversation, and
Yeah, I think
it's
they
something
segue well.
they segue really well. So if you wanted to have
Sure.
the floor.
To generally introduce the topic, I want to talk about fate or free will. I wrote a giant like 17-page essay in senior year of high school for
Wow.
English for AP Lit about this, referencing a bunch of media and personal experiences and everything like that. And just the idea of, do people's beliefs on whether their lives are dictated by fate or free will, how does that affect their everyday kind of actions? How does that affect whether they're selfish or selfless, whether you're doing things for others, whether there's a point to doing things for others, um, and generally what you think about your own philosophy. Like, do you think that what you think is something that you can choose, or just, okay, I think that there's fate, that fate is controlling everything, and that's not going to change. So even if that kind of makes me feel bad, I can't really do anything about that because it's just true. Or whether you think that thoughts on something that big can kind of change over time. So a lot of questions there, but
Yeah.
if anyone wants to.
Where do you stand on it?
So the way that I approach all kind of philosophical topics like this is trying to boil it down to a point of pragmatism. I think that's something I also get from my mom, to be honest. I feel like if I have a philosophy that is making me feel like shit and I'm having trouble getting through the day because of those ideas, I'm not going to follow that idea. I'm going to actively try to seek something else that satisfies my day to day. Can I just get through this? Can I do a good job in what I'm doing day to day? Can I just feel, again, content, you know? And for me, it's free will, 100%. Like the feeling that I have things within my control. And I acknowledge that the world has a lot of random things, but focusing on that internal locus of control of like, what are the things that I actually do have control over?
Yeah.
That's what motivates me personally. The feeling of like, oh, there's some higher power, or just that randomness is controlling everything, so I'm just going to go about my day. That is a very negative feeling to me. And I know some people find comfort in that. I find comfort through my own actions, personally.
Sure.
The way I kind of look at it is like, I agree with you that like believing in like free will definitely leads to much more like, I guess, satisfaction. Because actually, I don't know. I think it could go either way. Because if you believe in free will, then you believe that like all your choices are like yours to make. Then like, what if you're making bad choices at the end of the day? Like that probably makes you feel more shitty than if you're making good. Like if bad things constantly happen to you, and then you're just like, like this world, like everything is out of my control. But the way I look at it, like I think it's kind of a mix of both. Like I have like a, I guess, like a very like spiritual view on the world. Like I don't necessarily believe in like a god, and I don't believe in like that people have like absolute fate, but I think there is like kind of like a, like you know, like when you're driving on the highway and there's a lot of traffic, but then there's like that little HOV lane where if you have another
Yeah.
person, like you could easily just drive through quickly.
Yeah.
Like I believe that there is like that kind of thing in everyone's life where like if you're like kind of aligning yourself in a certain way and like following a certain path, I guess, then like things kind of happen more easily for you than like specifically you versus maybe if someone else was trying to emulate what you're doing, because that emulation isn't like true to them, because you're being true to yourself and like following your own kind of like I guess voice or will, because there's different versions of it. Like if you're following your own will and you know it's yours, then like, and you know like this is exactly what I want to do, like this is where I want to go,
Yeah.
or like this is what I want to be doing now, and like, and you're confident in that and in yourself, then I think a lot of good things will happen to you. Versus if like you're kind of like if even if it's like you're willing to make these choices, like let's say someone who's like cramming like every day for the MCAT, or I know it kind of keep bringing it back to career, but even though it's not what everything's about, but like let's say you are like that and you're constantly just trying to study and study and study, then like the rest of your life might kind of be more like difficult because you're kind of cutting things out. You're not like you're not like kind of enjoying yourself. You're not, and you don't even want to be a doctor. Like if you want to be a doctor, then yeah, like it's probably the best thing. But you don't even want to be a doctor. You're just doing it like for the money or the status or something like that. Like I think you will have a much more difficult path than like someone who truly does want to be a doctor and is doing these things or a much more difficult path than if you fall, if like instead of being a doctor you figure out what you actually want and then like align yourself with that.
Yep.
So I think like each person is kind of different and they all have their free will, but there is a certain true will that's like aligned to each person. I don't know. That's just
Is
kind
that
of
something that you think people know immediately, or that they have to discover for themselves? Because what you're talking about to me just feels like understanding your own identity.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, this is kind of where it gets a little like where people might like it gets kind of choppy for people. Like I guess it's not like a god as in like a higher deity who's like controlling things, but like a universe that wants to be in like harmony and balance. So then when you're like kind of like I kind of gotten this from like my own observations of the world and then also like reading a bunch and like watching like YouTube videos about like different philosophical ideas, but so like and again like obviously take this with a grain of salt. I'm just a guy. But but yeah, so like I in my own personal life, I feel like when I'm in those moments of like true alignment where like I'm like kind of in tune with what I want to be doing, I will kind of recognize or see like certain signs in the world that kind of like give that kind of like a confirmation.
Mm.
Like for example, maybe like one thing that happens to me a lot is like I'll think I see someone and then it's not them, and then maybe like 3 minutes later I'll run into the person who I initially thought I saw. If that happens to me, like I would take that
Glitch
as
in the
like
matrix.
yeah, like a glitch in the matrix or kind of like a sign that like okay, like I'm like paying attention to my like I'm like aligned right now kind of thing.
Mm.
So I guess it's like there is like some external validation from my perspective of it, but it's also a lot of like internal like recognizing like that there's not like I guess kind of like a disjoint within myself.
I do understand, yeah, the idea of like kind of being in harmony with the universe. I've always to kind of go back to what you were saying, Peter.
Absolutely.
I actually very much find comfort in knowing that there's so much out of my control. And this is coming from somebody who spent so much of his life needing to be in control of things and kind of like realizing that in the grand scheme of things, like each one of us, like we are so small and insignificant, and not to be like morbid, but we're all going to be dust someday. And no matter what we do, no matter how hard we try or do anything, like we all kind of have the same fate at the end of the day. And so, you know, when you think about that, like at first it's a very demoralizing thing. Like the idea of no matter what you do or accomplish, like it doesn't really end up mattering, but kind of being able to kind of sit with it and accept it. I realized just how kind of freeing it actually is, because I realized that there's nothing that I'm like supposed to be doing or that I should be doing. Like actually, it's an incredible gift that I can wake up each day and feel like I can follow whatever interests me and not feel like I should be doing something else, because like think of it if it was the other way around. We were in control of so much. Like that's a lot of pressure to put on somebody. Like
Yep.
if other people's lives were always dependent on you. I always think back to if you ever see like a before and after photo of like any US president after their term,
Oh
they
yeah.
look like they've
Oh,
aged like
yeah.
20 years.
Yeah.
And it's because the amount of pressure put on them, like no human being, that is not healthy for anyone. Because really, like it at the end of the day, like you're the only person you really at the end of the day like need to have the biggest sense of responsibility to is you, because that's like the one person you're with your whole life. And so yeah, I mean it's something I'm still continuing to wrestle with, but I've 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 been sometimes felt very grateful for feeling like, you know, there's actually not a lot that any of us can really control. Like there is, I think, for me, some comfort in that. Sarav, I want to hear from you on this. What
Yeah.
what do you
Yeah.
think?
So, now all of you guys had different opinions on the same thing, and I feel like I share all the opinion. When it comes to something philosophical, I try to um, learn as much as I can. I'm not a little, I'm like an insanely lazy person. So I don't spend, even though I want to learn a lot about something, I might not spend as much as time that it takes to actually learn about it. So I like learn a little bit, especially when it comes to philosophical things.
Yeah.
I'll start going crazy because when you learn as much as you can in philosophy, things about why we are there, why life is there, like who created it, and what the reason, what are we there for, and all of that. Um, the more you start learning about it, the more it feels like it doesn't matter. So here my opinion is very similar to what Jonas was talking about. So what I end up doing is pretty much similar to what Peter did. So I start suddenly looking at the practical aspects of things, the reality. So I like try to cut myself from thinking about anything philosophical and then start focusing on something that is achievable, start focusing on my school and my career or whatever, so that
Yep.
I stop going more insane.
Yeah.
um but you know uh, after a while, after like trying to learn things about this, one thing that I kind of understood, or rather my belief in any of these matters would be that as human beings we have no capacity to know anything for certain. I don't think we are uh, as evolved or as important as we think we are. If you take a small bug which we might crush, which we might not account for anything.
Yeah.
If you take an ant, for a matter of fact, ant can lift like 20x, 30x, 1000x their body weight. We
Yeah.
can't do shit. Okay, human beings are not very important for, according to me. So see, when it comes to, so this um goes very well with spirituality. So
Yeah.
most of the religions that I have heard of, or I know even a little bit about,
Mhm.
puts humans in the pedestal,
Yes.
think that the world is created for the humans and all that. I do not agree with that shit at all. We are just one among so many million creatures out there, and we are not important. So I feel like during our course of life, or during so far the mm, recorded history of human existence,
Yeah.
we have, or we will never have, or we will never achieve the amount of intelligence we need to understand life.
Yeah.
After I came to that conclusion, I stopped thinking about all of this. Now my life is very similar to what Jonas was talking about. So now I think about is the reality aspects of it. Yeah, I understand that. I can. It's more of a free. It's freeing. It's not a free will in per se. It's freeing that you end up knowing that it will not amount to anything, but it's not personal. It's just the way it is. It's not just you. It's whoever it is. So, say someone who invented USB, we don't know them from the top of our
Yep.
mind. We still use the invention, but maybe like 200, 300 years later, we might not be using USB because we stopped using DVD, CDs, and all of that. So, at the end of the day, it doesn't matter. So, what do you do when you know that it doesn't matter? So, you have the freeness to do whatever you want, but then you have some morality associated with it. You have a moral compass, so you don't want to go like assault someone or anything.
I hope
But at the
so.
same time, yeah. So as long as then comes the natural progression of life. So we have, as human beings, we are like a very uh, social creature. We reproduce and all of that. So we'll end up either getting married, reproducing, and whatever. So once we progress through life, through like the different stages of life that is like widely acknowledged as normal, we end up creating responsibilities for us. So those responsibilities end up restricting our freeness. So I can't like up and leave to a different country because I have student debt. But talking about freedom of choice, or rather free will versus fate, from the perspective of Hinduism, because I'm born Hindu and like my parents are quote unquote slightly religious, not
Yeah.
super religious. Uh, so in Hinduism, there is a saying that everything is fate, and there is someone who writes what will happen through your entire existence in your forehead. It's called, literally in Tamil we call it as Talayeluthu, which literally translated means head writing, or writing on the head. So my father is someone who believes that. So he'll be like, okay, everything is written and it's bound to happen. If something sad happens, okay, it's meant to happen that way. Something good happens, it's meant to happen that way. I feel like that's a good workaround to have, to
Yeah.
to say if something shitty happens, if you think it's not in your control. So you can think, okay, it's fate. When you think that, you stop worrying about things.
Well, my question is, does that also deflate when good things happen?
Yeah. So see, from my perspective, you should not feel super happy when something good happens and super sad when something bad happens. So when you bring this into the equation and you think there is zero control, if it's good, if irrespective of whether it's good or bad, if you think it's meant to be, you'll not feel, you'll not get affected by it. So you'll
Yeah.
not feel super happy when something good happens, and you will not feel super sad when something bad happens. So this is something that my father does, because
Yeah.
he's someone who believes that everything is fate and there is kind of zero free will. But that doesn't stop him from getting out of the bed and going and doing
Yeah.
things. So if the extreme is when you don't do shit, when you like
Mhm.
think everything is written, I'm gonna be a millionaire. I know like some dude who knows astrology, he or she told me that I'm gonna be like Bill Gates, and
Yeah.
you don't do shit, you don't go study what computer science is, you're not
Yeah.
going to make money out of it. So this is where I feel like there is a difference, because when it comes to reality, even though my father believes everything is written
Yeah.
and everything is like, you technically don't have any authority over it,
Yeah.
he still goes to work, he still does all of the things, because he has responsibilities. So he has kids, he has his wife, he has his mother to take care of and all of that. So I feel like this is where I draw the line. So I personally feel like on the grand scheme of things, nothing matters, we don't matter. So we just focus on the responsibilities we have as part of being a society, as part of being a family. So if my
Yeah.
family is rich, or if they are not rich, if my father is old, he has some kind of illness, I have to take care of him.
Yeah.
For that, so that is a responsibility that I am taking upon myself based on my family situation.
One thing that my mom said to me recently, because I wrote, there was a little poem I wrote. I had never written a poem before. I was just like, yeah, let's do it. About basically that feeling of like being young and there are so many roads that you can take, but knowing that if you don't make a choice, you're going to choose none. And if you make a choice, you have to make a choice. You
Yeah.
can't just do all these things that you're interested in. You're going to have to specialize at some point if you want to, like, at least in my American mind, if you want to like achieve something within it,
Sure.
And, I was talking to my mom about that, because she doesn't understand that feeling of like, oh, I need to do something great in some field. She definitely doesn't have that same thing, and I think is better off for it. But she said when she read the whole thing about that feeling of like, okay, over time I'm just going to not be able to do this, and then this closes and so many doors are closing and you can only pick one.
Mhm.
What she said is that over time, just life has naturally led her to the things that are most important, that
Yeah.
she has gone through, and things have happened that she's done things that she likes, done things that she hasn't, but just naturally through the course of this, you're going to get those responsibilities and those inherent day by day things you're going to keep doing. And I think the most important thing is to recognize the meaning in that, and recognize that you're doing it every day, and you should be, and it's a good thing. Basically, once all the fat is cut off from your life of like, oh, I could do this, I could do this, I could do this, you come to what's really important, you know?
Yeah. Guys, this was a lot of fun. I
Yeah.
think we had yet another really wholesome conversation. I also want to give a special shout out to both Kevin and David Habboosh. There were producers
Yeah.
in the back. They came at 3:30 today to help with set up, so couldn't do this without them. So really, thank you so much. Also, I wanted to give a shout out to Daniel for making really awesome drawings.
Yeah. Could you hold those up for the camera?
Yeah, I got this page and this,
Whoa.
and got this one. I got this
So you're
one.
Jackson Pollock.
I got this one.
Is there a
Could-
briefcase on that
Could
one?
I ask about the one that has my name 3 times in a row?
Oh yeah, Peter. I was just looking at Peter.
Okay. Were you trying to like summon me in the mirror?
Maybe one day.
And thank you all from home. Good grief. For watching. Hope to see you all again soon. Take care, everybody.